the Sony ZV-E10 II, Panasonic Lumix S5 Twi, Canon PowerShot G7X Mark III, Panasonic Lumix GH5 II, and DJI Osmo Pocket 3 are the most popular cameras for YouTube of 2025, but which is the absolute best? We are going to compare them to each other and score them in various categories, with some categories holding more weight than others. In the end, we'll decide which is the best one based on the final score, and we will declare the absolute winner. Let's dive in. First, we're going to compare them on the video quality category, which has a multiplier of 3x. The Sony ZV-E10 II is a solid starting point, offering internal 10-bit 422 color and the ability to shoot 4K video at up to 60 frames per second, which gives you some nice flexibility. I found that while the footage looks great in controlled environments with impressive dynamic range for an APS-C sensor, it can risk overheating during long 4K recording sessions, and the lack of in-body image stabilization means you really need a tripod or gimbal for smooth, handheld shots, which is why it gets a 7.8 out of 10. Next up, the Panasonic Lumix S5 High is a beast for more cinematic work, boasting 6K open-gate recording, which gives me so much room to crop in post-production, and its dynamic range in vlog is fantastic, especially with its dual native ISO for clean low-light shots. However, I did notice a significant crop when shooting in 4K at 60 frames per second, and a heavy rolling shutter effect with quick pans, which can be a deal-breaker for fast-moving subjects, so for that, it earns an 8.5 out of 10. For a more compact setup, the Canon PowerShot G7X Mark III is surprisingly capable, delivering detailed 4K video at 30 frames per second without any crop factor, which is a huge plus for getting the most out of its lens and 1-inch sensor. I noticed the quality is a clear step up from a smartphone, especially in low light. But when you put it against larger sensor cameras like the S5 High, it just can't compete on dynamic range and overall image depth, landing it a 7.2 out of 10. The Panasonic Lumix GH5 II is a true video-focused workhorse with an almost overwhelming amount of options, letting me shoot in Cinema 4K, use anamorphic lenses, and record 10-bit 422 internally, which is incredible for color grading. The in-body stabilization is also excellent for handheld work, but I found its autofocus to be a weak point, especially in 24p, which can be frustrating when you're trying to track a subject, so it sits at a strong 8.9 out of 10. Finally, the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 completely surprised me with its incredible combination of a large 1-inch sensor and a built-in 3-axis gimbal, producing exceptionally smooth and vibrant 4K footage at 60 frames per second, even when I was walking at night. The low-light performance is genuinely strong for its size, capturing crisp details with very little noise. And while it's not as versatile as an interchangeable lens camera, the sheer quality and stability straight out of my pocket is unmatched in this lineup, giving it a 9.4 out of 10. The DJI Osmo Pocket 3 takes the win with 9.4 points because its combination of a large sensor and mechanical gimbal delivers outstandingly smooth and high-quality video directly out of the camera. Next, we are going to compare them on the ease of use category, which has a multiplier of 2. The Sony ZV-E10 II has some great user-friendly automatic settings and a helpful flip-out screen, and I love the improved larger hand grip, but having to dive into the menus to change basic shooting modes feels a bit slow compared to some of the others here. So for me, it gets an 8.5 out of 10. Moving on to the Panasonic Lumix S5 Q, I found its refined buttons and impressively simple menu system a huge relief, however. Its larger, heavier body makes it feel less like a quick vlogging tool, and more like a professional cinema camera, which is why it scores a 7.2 out of 10. The Canon PowerShot G7X Mark III is a classic compact vlogging camera that powers up in less than a second and features a super useful 180-degree tilting screen. And while the EOS-style menu is familiar and easy enough to navigate, it doesn't feel quite as instantaneous as our top contender, earning it a 9.1 out of 10. I found the Panasonic Lumix GH5 II to have a really clever and straightforward touchscreen interface that you can use for things like touchpad autofocus, but its more traditional layout and deeper menu system give it a steeper learning curve than the point-and-shoot options, which is why I'm giving it a 7.8 out of 10. Finally, the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 is just unbelievably fast, going from off to ready to film in about 1 second with a simple push of its rotatable screen. And although the screen is a bit small and you really need the protective cover when not using it, its sheer speed and integrated gimbal make it the most grab-and-go camera I've ever used, scoring a 9.6 out of 10. With a score of 9.6 out of 10, the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 takes the win here because its incredibly fast startup time and integrated design offer an unmatched level of speed and simplicity for capturing content on the fly. Next, we are going to compare them on the audio quality category, which has a multiplier of 2. The Sony ZV-E10 II comes with a clever 3-capsule directional microphone that I found great for focusing on my voice. But the audio can sound a bit compressed, and I experienced some frustrating peaking issues, which is a letdown for a camera designed specifically for vlogging, giving it a 7.2 out of 10. Moving up, I was seriously impressed with the Panasonic Lumix S5 Pi, which offers incredibly clean preamps and professional options like a line-level input and 96 kHz recording, though having to deal with 4 audio tracks in my editor for a simple stereo microphone was a bit annoying, so I'm scoring it an 8.8 out of 10. For the Canon PowerShot G7X Mark III, while I love that it has a microphone input on such a small body, the built-in audio itself sounded quite tinny and thin in my recordings, making an external microphone almost essential rather than an option, landing it at a 6.5 out of 10. The Panasonic Lumix GH5 II is a classic powerhouse, and its exceptional audio preamps delivered fantastic results that were a clear step up from the Sony, though it still benefits most from an external audio recorder to truly get that professional sound, which is why I'm giving it a solid 8.2 out of 10. Finally, the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 absolutely blew me away with its built-in 3-microphone array that captures clean stereo audio and handles wind noise effectively. And the inclusion of 32-bit float recording gives me so much flexibility in post-production that I barely ever reach for an external microphone, earning it a 9.4 out of 10. The DJI Osmo Pocket 3's out-of-the-box convenience and professional-grade features, like 32-bit float audio, secured its 9.4-point win in this category. Next, we are going to compare them on the battery life category, which has a multiplier of 1.5. The Sony ZV-E10 II is a huge step up from its predecessor with its larger Z-series battery that lets me film for over 2 hours straight in 4K at 24 frames per second. But when I push it to 60 frames per second, it tends to overheat after about 40 minutes, which can be a real shoot stopper. So for that, it gets an 8.2 out of 10. Moving to the full-frame Panasonic Lumix S5 Pi, I found it gives me nearly 2 hours of continuous 4K video, which is decent, but its battery life for photos is a bit of a letdown compared to others in its class, and I definitely recommend grabbing a spare or using its USB-C power option for a long day of shooting, earning it a 7.5 out of 10. I was honestly a bit disappointed with the Canon PowerShot G7X Mark III, as its battery is rated for a below-average 265 shots, and while it is a super portable camera, I found myself constantly worrying about the battery dying on me during a vlog, making it a tough recommendation for serious use without a power bank handy, which leads me to a 6.0 out of 10. Then we have the Panasonic Lumix GH5 II, a true workhorse that let me record for over an hour and a half in 4K at 60 frames per second, and an even more impressive 2.5 hours in 1080p, offering more reliability for long takes than the similarly priced Sony without the same overheating fears, giving it a strong 8.8 out of 10. Finally, the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 completely surprised me by lasting for a solid 2 hours while recording in 4K at 60 frames per second, which is amazing for something so small. And even though the battery is not removable, it charges to 80% in just 16 minutes, making it incredibly practical for on-the-go shooting where you cannot be tied down. So it gets a 9.5 out of 10. With an incredible 2 hours of 4K, 60 frames per second recording time packed into a tiny body and ultra-fast charging, the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 takes the win with 9.5 points for its unmatched convenience and endurance. Finally, we are going to compare them on the value for money category, which has a multiplier of 2. The Sony ZV-E10 II is an incredible value package for any desk-based YouTuber, giving you professional 10-bit video features and a dedicated product showcase mode. But I found the lack of in-body image stabilization and its tendency to overheat during long 4K recording sessions hold it back from perfection, so it gets an 8.8 out of 10. I was blown away by the Panasonic Lumix S5 II as it brings full-frame cinematic quality and fantastic ergonomics to a price point that feels like a steal, though its larger body and less than stellar battery life make it a more deliberate choice compared to the grab-and-go options here, earning it an 8.2 out of 10. The Canon PowerShot G7X Mark III is a fantastic little pocket rocket that delivers results way better than a smartphone and even lets you stream directly to YouTube. But when I put its footage next to these other cameras with larger sensors, the difference in quality, especially in low light, is just too noticeable for me to score it higher than a 6.9 out of 10. Next up, the Panasonic Lumix GH5 II feels like an old friend. It's a reliable workhorse with amazing image stabilization and a ton of pro video options that still hold up today, however. Its smaller Micro Four Thirds sensor struggles a bit in dim light, and the autofocus can sometimes hunt, which is why I'm giving it a 7.5 out of 10. Finally, the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 is just in a league of its own for value. Having a 1-inch sensor on a mechanical gimbal this tiny feels like cheating, and the ability to go from my pocket to shooting stabilized 4K footage in seconds is a game changer that none of the others can match, giving it a score of 9.5 out of 10. The DJI Osmo Pocket 3 takes the win here with a 9.5 out of 10, simply because nothing else packs this much stabilized, high-quality video power into something you can literally pull from your pocket and start shooting with in seconds. The results of our comparison show each product shines in its own way, but the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 stands out with its score of 99.45, Throughout my testing, its capability was astounding, with features packed into such a compact form. Its unparalleled combination of a 1-inch sensor and a built-in gimbal provided extraordinarily smooth and vibrant 4K footage. I found it to be a game-changer for quick, high-quality content creation without the fuss of bulky gear. The speedy startup and professional-level audio features simply seal the deal, making it the clear winner for anyone wanting top-notch production in a truly portable package. Looking at the other contenders, the Panasonic Lumix GH5 II and Lumix S5T closely followed with scores of 86.9 and 85.1 feet, respectively. Both cameras are commendable for their excellent cinematic video quality and robust performance. The GH5 II's stabilization and the S5i's dual native ISO made them standout options for more controlled filming environments. The Sony ZV-E10 II achieved 84.7 with its great value and features for beginners, whereas the Canon PowerShot G7X Mark III, though not as competitive with bigger sensor cameras, offers a compact, quick-use option. Each has its strengths, but when it comes to overall versatility and cutting-edge convenience, nothing matched the Osmo Pocket 3 in my experience.